Hey, it is your host, LaTanya Moore with Real Perspectives, and we have a fabulous, fabulous guest today. Her name is Effy Blue. She's a relationship coach who specializes in different types of ethical non-monogamy or polyamory. In addition to one-on-one coaching sessions in person and over video, she also runs panels, workshops, and social events around the New York City areas for Curious Foxes. Curious Foxes make up a warm community of people who are exploring ethical non-monogamy. Now, Effy is here today to talk with us about how to create and maintain healthy, unconventional relationships. Effy, welcome to the show.
Hi, greetings from New York.
So awesome. Listen, a big part of your community and what you're doing, you talk a lot about this concept of relationships by design. Talk with us about what that is and what that means.
Sure, absolutely. So you actually mentioned ethical non-monogamy and polyamory just a second ago, and I want to take a second to differentiate those a little bit. So ethical if you think about sort of the umbrella terms, right? So you have monogamy, which is the model that we are very familiar with. And there's non-monogamy, and in our world, it's very important that it's ethical non-monogamy, and I will talk about that in a second. That's kind of the big umbrella of people who are choosing to have a non-monogamous structure. Polyamory is one aspect of that structure. Polyamory, and I know that you've covered this in your show before, polyamory, many loves, right? It's having multiple loving, emotionally invested relationships at the same time, which is a type of ethical non-monogamy. There are other ways of doing ethical non-monogamy where it doesn't necessarily require juggling being in multiple emotional relationships. It could just be sexual relationships. It could be dating. And in different structures. So polyamory is just one aspect of the ethical non-monogamy arena, if you like, the umbrella. In terms of my coaching, I recognize all the things that I've just said, actually, and that's how the relationship by design came about, is that the ethical non-monogamy, monogamy is so heavily prescribed. Right? We hear about it from anywhere from most of our parents to TV to Hallmark to Disney. We really have an understanding of what monogamy is. So when you go to when you cross over to non-monogamy, though, there are no reference points and there are no guidelines, if you will, of how to create that relationship for yourself. There are all these different types of ways of doing it, and there is information about that. But what it does do is it affords you an opportunity to design a relationship that fits you, rather than try to fit into a relationship structure that is pre-made. Because I don't think that I think that everybody's an individual, and it makes sense that two or more individuals in a relationship require a custom designed relationship. And that's kind of how I came to relationship by design. So a lot of my coaching is about looking at the people and their needs and their requirements to be in a healthy, happy relationship that serves everyone, and then coach them in tools so they can design one for themselves. And it is custom for those people.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know previously, I've had several interviews about this, and one thing that is a consistent theme is that sometimes you may have one partner who is, let's say, pro-monogamy, and then you have another partner that, although that's a value that they have, they really want to explore this non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy and what degrees of that. how do you deal with that dynamic though when you have a couple, they come to you for advice, and so one person really is not 100% on board, and then you have the other person that really wants to try it. Mm-hmm. What's some advice that you would give to that couple?
Sure. So, firstly, I think that I would like to use a phrase that Reid Mihalko uses. Reid is a great sex educator, and you can find his stuff on readaboutsex.com, R-E-I-D, readaboutsex.com. He talks about dating your species. He says, date your species. So know what you need and what you require in a relationship, and seek those people who need and require the same things. So starting point is hopefully we find our species to date. If we find ourselves in a situation where a couple has been together, or they want to be together, one party wants to be non-monogamous and the other party is cautious, there's two ways this can go. One of the things I'm very, very strict about is not being somebody who converts people. I don't believe in poly-preaching. I don't think that non-monogamy, polyamory is for everyone. Just like monogamy isn't for everyone, nor is non-monogamy. So if one party is, they've done their research, they've dug in deep, and they gave it some thought, and they've checked in with themselves, and they come out the other side, and they say, listen, monogamy is what I want. At that point, there is nothing that I can really do, because I'm not interested in converting somebody to doing something they don't necessarily want to do. So that's kind of one couple that I advise them to figure out whether they want to stay in this relationship or not, because they're very opposing thoughts. On the other side, you get couples that one party is ready and want to try this, and the other party is cautious. And then what we can do is actually investigate the caution part. What is it that making them cautious? What are the fears that they have? What are the preconceived ideas they might have around ethical non-monogamy? Maybe they haven't done their research. Maybe they haven't got resources. These resources aren't that easy to find. Much better these days, but historically we had The Ethical Slut, which is the one book that was written about polyamory, and that was pretty much it. And these days there's some great books and websites, but still it can be very confusing. And what I like doing with those couples is actually sit them down and address all the questions they have. And that could be, a 1 or 2 hour session when we sit together. And again, it's not about convincing. It's not about changing anyone's mind, but really educating and informing people so they can make a conscious decision on what they want in that relationship.
Awesome. So with all of this, talk with us about how you got into this particular area, because I interview and have dealt with so many different types of relationship coaches. Not a lot in this area. Talk with me just a little bit though about why this versus some other form of relationship coaching.
Sure. It's very much tied into my own journey. I have, I publicly admit to this these days. Before this, it was sort of something that really pained me. I have a history of serial infidelity, meaning that my previous relationships failed mostly because I cheated on my partner, which I'm not proud of. I do not approve of cheating at all. And what I did is that I would confess, because I didn't approve of cheating back then either. So I wasn't really happy with what I was doing, and I would sort of confess and talk, and then it would be a lot of tears and heartbreak, tough things to deal with. And after a while, when this was persisting in my life, and I was either feeling unhappy in relationships, after a while, because I was cheating or I was hurting people, or I was feeling that I was missing out on something, that it wasn't quite complete for me, I've decided that relationships are probably something that I'm not very good at, period. Because all I knew was monogamy, and I realized that I just wasn't built for it, and therefore I shouldn't be in a relationship because I was hurting people that I loved. So I kind of parked relationships for a long time, actually, and poured myself into my previous career, which was in advertising. And I did that for, I was in an international position for about 10 years. I traveled the world. I lived in Asia, Africa, mainland Europe, and it was a great excuse not to have relationships, right? Because I was living and I had a career to show for it. But I found out eventually, I eventually moved to New York and decided to stay here, having sort of done my tours around the world. And I realized once I was stationary, there was this hole that I did want a relationship. But I didn't want to go back to that. So I was seeking something, and I was talking to people and trying to understand, and I stumbled over the non-monogamous community in New York City. And it was a huge paradigm shift for me. It changed my life to meet a bunch of people who share the same feelings as I did and did something about it. They actually found a solution. So it fascinated me to an extent that I was about ready also to take a sabbatical from work. So I decided that this is what I wanted to do, that I wanted to take a sabbatical from my career and just really study this, like understand non-monogamy, how it works, why it exists, what are the stigmas around it, what makes it a viable option, right? How are these relationships healthy? And that goes from anywhere from human psychology to anthropology to actually like going out there and talking to people. So I kind of devoted my life, that portion of my life to it, during which I went through my own journey, realizing what it is that I want in a relationship and what does my relationship by design look like. And came out the other side with so much knowledge and so much new learning. I was passionate about passing it forward, passing it on, because I kept meeting, as I was doing my research and meeting people, I kept meeting other people who are monogamous, and I would tell them about it, and they would just, for some people it made sense. It would just, you'd see it wash over them in a way that's like changing their lives, I kept hearing these common struggles that everybody was having, and I just spent 2 years trying to understand all that, and I became very, very passionate about passing all that knowledge on to people. Also, my previous career allowed me to, it gave me the skill to sort of break things down. I was in advertising, so I had the skill set to break things down and make them understandable and digestible in bite size, right? So, and that's kind of how I approached it. I looked at everything that I know. I broke it down into bite-sized, digestible sections, which I teach as tools. And then we have an ongoing conversation with my clients about what is their design, what does their design look like, and we build that. And so that's kind of how it all came about for me.
That's really, really fascinating, because a few things that you mentioned I want to talk a little bit about. Sure. Is during your research you were saying that you looked at a lot of different things, psychology, anthropology, and how all of those things, you probably looked at religious beliefs and spirituality, mm-hmm. and all of that, and kind of how that weaves into either the concept of just monogamy or not, or the different lifestyles from an anthropological standpoint. Mm-hmm. What were some things that you found, though, that were the main influences for people choosing either this I'll just say unconventional relationship versus monogamy?
So there are a few reasons why people go down that route. One, the sort of one reason is just the way those people are built, right? So there's a great book called Sex at Dawn that I recommend to your listeners. It's an anthropological study on relationship structures, and in that book, they make an argument that actually genetically some of us are prone to being non-monogamous. It is in our genetic format. So there's some of us are just born that way. It's just like being left-handed is kind of the comparison that I make. It's our orientation. Just like somebody can be gay, they can also just be orientation-wise intrinsically non-monogamous. So that's kind of one reason. There are other reasons, other common reasons. Often what I see are one of the couples are identified bisexual. they have a desire to have relationships with, somebody on the opposite gender and same gender as them. And being in one relationship, one monogamous relationship, leaves them, doesn't satisfy them because they don't get to exercise the other part of their sexuality. So that's another reason why, and then hopefully they reconcile this, and that party can, develop another relationship that completes what they need, if you will. There are other, in a similar token, there are other reasons, such as, again, it could be again, sex-related, that one party can have a certain sexual expression. For example, they can be kinky, and the other party is not willing, or it doesn't appeal to them, or doesn't want to go that way. And it's not, it's not fair on either party, one to miss out on something that's really important to them, and the other one having to do something they don't really want to do. So they can get to a place where they can really appreciate the relationship they have, but outsource this one need, right? One need, one desire. So that's another reason. I have also seen, I don't have any clients to say, but I've seen people who end up in non-monogamous relationships, for example, in triads, where it's a resourcing issue. Actually, 3 people can provide better resources for the family. So that's something that I've seen that it's something currently I'm actually researching, that particular topic of like the ideal family structures in non-monogamy. Like, what do they look like? What can they look like? And why would you go ahead and do something like that? Those tend to be the common reasons why people choose non-monogamy.
And those are all really, really interesting. And I wanted to ask you about that because these are some things that I know, at least with my show, have not been explored. We've talked a lot about other things, but I also talk with our listeners, because I know that at least a general thought is that these alternative or unconventional relationships, the desires are mostly sex driven. Have you noticed, well, I guess I should ask you, have you found that in your research to actually be true, that it's mostly sex related, or have you found that it deals with a multitude of, meeting a multitude of needs that may or may not have anything to do with sex?
I have. So it's a very good question. And this is how we start the design process, actually. Those are exactly the questions, like the initial questions that we ask when we start the design process. Is it that you're trying to meet a sexual need that you're not getting in your current relationship, or is it something else, right? And definitely sex is one of the driving factors, for sure. Especially those who are in touch with their sexual desires and realize that it is an important part of their sexual expression, and they may not get what they need in the relationship and look to open up to find what they're looking for. But it's definitely not the only reason. I definitely see people seek other relationships for other types of connection, intellectual connection, activity partners, certain type, sensual connections. Not necessarily just I want to have sex with a bunch of people, but more like there are things that I want to do with a partner that I'm connected to, that I'm in a sort of loving relationship with, that isn't necessarily only about sex. I've seen a lot of people who, date someone other than their, current partner because of an intellectual connection. They have an intellectual connection and they like each other's company, and they want to take it just, beyond friendship and have intimacy between them as well as, a friendship.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that my listeners really get that well-rounded view of exactly what we're talking about, because again, we're talking about a non-monogamous relationship with people that are committed to each other, and that's a little bit different again from some other things that some other areas that we've explored here on Real Perspectives. Talk with me a little bit, because this is certainly for my education, and hopefully it educates the listeners. What would be the difference between, or is there a difference between this and swinging?
Sure, that's a valid question. So swinging is actually an activity. It's not a relationship structure. It's like skiing, or it's an activity that couples do, and then those who swing are swingers, right? So those who ski are skiers. Often swingers are actually emotionally monogamous, sexually promiscuous, which is very, very different than somebody who's practicing polyamory. So swingers or swinging is definitely also under the ethical non-monogamous umbrella, right? So they're all under this like non-monogamy, but they're just different designs, different ways of expressing that structure. But when one side, on sort of the polyamory end, it's very much about emotional connections, multiple nurtured relationships that are often interconnected. On the swinging side, it tends to be an activity. Swinging tends to be an activity that a couple engages in for social, is a part of their social life, actually, and social life and their sexual expression. Swingers are, as I said, often emotionally monogamous, meaning they maintain the core structure, or the monogamy, the two people structure, and they just have sexual relationships outside of that.
Awesome. Great definition. Because again, these are certainly questions that I know that people that are seeking understanding about this entire ethical non-monogamy concept.
Sure.
Now, you have or you work with a community of folks called the Curious Foxes. Tell us about the Curious Fox socials. What are they, and talk with us about how that works.
Sure, absolutely. Curious Foxes, they're actually kind of they're magical. They've grown organically to be what they are. Initially, the Curious Fox social was something that I designed. I wanted to have as an event that I could just invite people to ask me I get asked the same questions over and over again, which is fine. I love answering those questions because it is educating, and I do, always be educating is one of my mottos. So I'm more than happy to answer those questions, anybody who asks them to me. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to sort of being able to invite people to an event where I could talk to them in more depth, rather than on a street corner or a cocktail party. It comes up because I tell people what I do, and then people have questions. And I wanted to have an event that I could just invite people to and sort of address them all at once. That was the original idea. The other thing that I wanted to do is even though there's a huge polyamorous, non-monogamous community in New York, and there are a lot of social events that you can go, picnics, and there's poly cocktails, which is second Monday of every month. There's a huge social event. There isn't really anywhere you can go as a newbie or somebody who's merely curious, right? This is the Curious Fox events are for the curious who are interested in exploring. It's no commitments, no promises, which means that a couple can come together without taking a leap into something they're not sure about, right? So that's kind of what the idea was, like, come and learn about it and make no commitments. It's not that you're now suddenly practicing polyamory because you've just been to an event or you've been to a social and you're kind of overwhelmed by it all. That was the original idea, and I was so surprised by the demand. I put it out there, and there was immediate demand. And since then, it's been growing. I think we're now on our sixth event, and there's a community of people who identify as Curious Foxes. Like you've noticed, we sell out every month. We keep the event. We keep the event to no more than 40 people if we can handle it. Sometimes we get wait lists, and it's an important topic, so we sort of let more people in. But the idea is that we pick a topic that we are going to explore that month. It could be anything, like the most recent one, the one that we're going to have it in September. Our next one is opening up. So how do you talk about your relationship structure to friends and family? or even to strangers, like if it comes up at some dinner party. And we've had topics like ethical non-monogamy in children, where we had, where we had a child who's aware of his parents' structure come and talk to us about his experience, what it is like to be a child in a non-monogamous family. And that was fascinating. It was just such a fascinating installment of the social. And it's sort of how and that's how the social is structured. We get a team and a panel of people who have been practicing a form of ethical non-monogamy for a while and have been through all of these things that we're exploring. That panel shares their story briefly about who they are and in line with the theme, so we set a context. And after that, we open it out to Q&As, which is like the main part of our event. We open, it's a good, it's not like an afterthought, do you have any questions, but come to this event curious with questions, because that's what the event is about. And we open the floor to an hour and a half of questions, discussions, and shares, where every question is addressed, if not absolutely answered until the folks are satisfied. And it's a place for learning. It's a contained space. It's private. We don't record anything. We don't take any pictures. And it's quite magical, to be honest. I learn every time, and and this is what I do for a living, and I learn something new every time. And I learn because I see the things that people are curious about that's relevant to them, things that I might not have ever thought of. So that's kind of what the Curious Folks socials are. And people who come regularly, really identify as Curious Foxes now. It's a thing. We have a secret Facebook group that where we get together on, and we publish articles and resources. And the reason why we keep the group secret, not for exclusivity reasons. Actually, we're very radically inclusive, but to provide people the privacy they need as they're exploring, right? Because we might not all be ready. Just because you're exploring something, it doesn't mean you get to commit to it and the world knows about it, right? So, and Facebook can do that sometimes because of the algorithm. So we have a secret group where people can go in, explore for a while, and if they decide it's not for them, they can absolutely leave. And the time they spend in that group is private. And the resources they're reading, the articles they're reading, things they're liking or sharing, all contained within the group. And that's sort of the digital version of what we do. It's a great event, and anybody in the New York area who's curious about ethical non-monogamy, I invite you to join us. You can go to, I think it's effyblue.com/curiousfox. You should be able to get all the details, and please sign up and come. It's a donation-only event. It's for people. It's not something that I do. It's not really a business thing. It's a public service is the way I look at it.
That's really awesome, because I like the fact that the structure of this is really for educational purposes, and it's in a safe environment in terms of no one has to be concerned about coming and getting photographs or this isn't a marketing tool. It really is an environment for people to come and get the help that they need. So that's really awesome. Tell us, though, in addition to this, in addition to your socials and the other things that we've talked about, what are some other endeavors that you have going on?
So most of my day I spend coaching people. So I'm a relationship coach. I work with couples who are exploring and curious about ethical non-monogamy, and they're transitioning. They're transitioning, or they're already non-monogamous and they're having issues. So I do one-on-one coaching, which is where my passion is, actually. Also, I do other workshops around sex positivity, which is another important area for me. And when I say sex positivity, so sex positive culture, What we mean by that is all genders, orientations, and sexual expression are celebrated as long as it's safe and consensual. And I think it's something very important that we talk about. It doesn't mean that we are all, we're just talking about sex all the time, and that's all we do. And in any way, anywhere we like, we're being promiscuous, and we think that everybody should be, it's free love and sex. That's not what we believe at all. But what we do believe is that sexual expression or someone's sexuality is a part of their self-expression, and it should be celebrated. And it's really important that it is, of course, safe for everybody involved and consensual, that everyone's really up for what's going down. So I do a lot of sort of workshops and talks around that. Also, I teach consent workshops and how you can how do you ask for consent, how do you give consent, and how do you negotiate around what feels good for you, what doesn't. Also, I'm a part of a collective of people who work in this arena called Hacienda. We do events, we do what we call play parties, where there are social parties where sex is allowed. And there tend to be more community-based parties, and where people can come in and meet other, explore their sexuality and express their sexuality in a social, friendly, community-based setting. So this is kind of what I do, and this is my business. So I actually spend most of my free time, which is on doing this kind of stuff. It's my passion. It's what I do. So most of my days I spend working on this stuff.
Awesome. So how can our Real Perspective listeners, again, keep up with you and all the work that you're doing?
Sure. Thank you for asking that. So my website is effyblue.com. So that's EFFY, blue like the sky.com. You can see all my coaching, a bit more insight to who I am, where I came from, and the kind of the work I do on that website. From there, you can also on Facebook. You can find us if you search for me on Facebook, Effy Blue. You'll see my page. From there, we can you can also search for Curious Fox, and you'll find somebody called Curious Fox on Facebook. And if you friend them, we will add you to our secret group for more information. Also, if you want to work with me, the first step is to book a 20-minute mutual assessment video call. I'm very clear on what I can support people with. So what I like to do is talk to people, hear out what they need support with, and I can say, yes, that's something I can help you with, or this is out of my scope. Also, the people that I'm talking to may or may not want to do the work with me. It has to be a match, right? It has to be right rapport. So that 20-minute call is no commitment on either side, just getting to know each other call. And you can book those through my website. Also, for your listeners specifically, what I'd like to offer is normally our first sessions are 1 hour long. What I would like to offer is those who want to book our first sessions within the month of August. I'm offering 2-hour sessions for the price of one session. So that could be taken in one long go, or 2 1-hour sessions. I actually recommend 2 hours, and a 2-hour first session. They end up being very, very useful. So I would like to offer that to your listeners. And for them to take part in that, they have to go to effyblue.com /perspective. So effyblue, EFFY, blue.com /perspective.
Well, listeners, you've heard it from the lady herself, Miss Effy Blue. And if you'd like to take her up on that offer, again, that's effyblue.com /perspectives. And thank you so much for being on our show today. And listeners, again, that is effyblue.com /perspectives. And I'm encouraging you, if you have some questions and you'd like a consultation, contact Effy, find out more about what she's doing, and continue to follow what they're doing there at Curious Fox. I'm your host of Real Perspectives, LaTanya Moore, where we seek real people with real issues and real solutions from real perspectives. Real people.